that guy, I mean, all he had to do was speak.
He was a scary dude.
He
Right?
really was
because
so
he used to like
intimidating.
stop him on the Lord of the Rings set, and he'd be like, "That's not the sound it makes when you stab a man in the back."
Right? Yeah,
They're like,
because he
"I'm
knew.
Weird,
sorry, Sir
creepy dude.
Christopher
Like,
Lee."
how many
He
guys
used
have
to be
you
in the special
murdered?
forces. He killed a lot of people.
Yeah,
He was
oh,
basically like a
man.
British Navy SEAL.
Yeah, actually, his I think it's his nephew wrote James Bond, and
Oh, you
Christopher.
based it on him.
Yeah, based
Yeah.
it on Christopher
Mm.
Lee.
Christopher Lee.
Yeah, he was.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's one of those like, I know 90 ways to kill a man.
Oh
I'm like, I'm
man,
sure
yeah,
you do.
that's
Have some tea.
yeah, chill, please.
Yeah, man, calm down, dude.
Man.
Like, I'm not impressed unless you're gonna kill me, in which case I'm super impressed.
Yeah,
Rest in peace,
I
Christopher
could
Lee.
be.
Welcome to more Artistry Unearthed. We are Cryptic Tattoo and Social Gallery here in Springfield, Missouri. I am Nate,
I'm David.
I'm Kelsey.
and with us is a super awesome guest, a very special artist, incredibly talented artist in illustration, design, both traditional and digital, painter, and former tattoo artist.
Yeah.
Also, someone that I consider your favorite metal band's favorite artist.
Well,
Is
thanks.
that fair?
Yeah.
At least some of my favorites.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
David Frizell.
Yeah.
How you doing, man? It's
Oh,
awesome
dude.
to have you, dude.
No, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Like, so
Mhm.
for several years, I mean, for a good handful of years, I've had the chance to like pal around with you in the local scene, mostly like comic book conventions,
Yeah.
and you always have like you're known for having that massive like bookshelf stand. It's basically the sarcophagus with art inside of it. And you consistently deliver like really. And like just really incredible, just both traditional and digital art of like horror monsters. I think there's a lot of Elvira's in there.
Yeah,
There's a lot
two
of
of
there's Alice Cooper's. I mean, you kind of have like this brand about you for being like just I guess an old school horror kind of guy.
Yeah.
But your career as an artist spans a huge like resume. You have your work done in a handful of different mediums. But your work actually has you have a really huge resume of a lot of different kinds of work, and I wanted to kind of showcase at least talk about some of the things that I saw in you whenever one of the more important things that I've discovered, at least doing Clever Kaiju, is that there's a lot of artists and really incredibly talented people behind the scenes of some of the biggest franchises in entertainment, in movies, videos, or movies and film, which is the same thing, I guess. Animation, but like in the music industry, especially.
Yeah.
And to know that somebody like you, even though I've known you for a while and we've done a lot of work together, I tend to fanboy about you quite a bit. Like I'm a huge fan of your work and a lot of the
Thank
properties
you.
that I didn't even know that you were a part of until later on.
I get bored and have to spread out a little bit.
Yeah,
Actually, it's more than that. You really, if you want to be able to feed your family, you sometimes
That's
have
fair.
to diversify your portfolio a bit. So trying to just pay the bills was I would take just about anything, but I ended up kind of liking just about everything because
Oh,
it gave
yeah.
me kind of a break. You don't want to get pigeonholed into doing just one thing all the time. Even though I'm kind of more known for the horror art and the album covers and that kind of stuff, be branching out into stuff that I don't even get to put on social media, such as work with different theme parks. You do a lot of wildlife, and you do family-oriented work. And yeah, it's really my career has been about 30 years. 30 years I've been doing this, and really enjoying what I do. Genuinely speaking, it sometimes becomes just a job, but then you just change it up with the next one, and it kind of renews that interest again.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's at least on a low, because Springfield isn't like a tiny town. It's not super small, but at the
Yeah.
same time, it's always easy to assume that the people behind all these major productions and their favorite work and their favorite fandoms are like, California or New York,
Yeah.
everything. And maybe it's just, because before the internet, that's pretty much the way it worked.
Yeah, it really was.
But it's interesting to know that there is somebody who lives right next door that is responsible for some of your favorite stuff on your shelves, and
Yeah.
you know, and case in point,
Mhm.
when I was a kid, back in the day when you had to buy albums on compact media, you actually had to go
Yeah.
to a store and buy it on a shelf. You probably don't remember, but
CDs?
CDs,
well,
I
you
had
know,
No, when you had to
CDs.
go
I
and
had
buy it on CD,
I
right?
had
See, like
cassettes.
12.
I'm not
oh,
that young.
right,
oh,
cassettes, there we go, that's the
Right.
'80s right there.
but I
Right. Oh
remember
my
walking
gosh.
in
Mhm.
and I'd just gotten into metal and for, just really deep into it. And it's
Mhm.
always easy to see the metal section of the CDs counter
Yeah.
where it's all doom and gloom, all these happy, pretty colors, all of a sudden black. And you just,
Yeah.
there's a shadow. And it's just doom and gloom. You expect that's the metal section. You're going to find
Mhm.
a whole lot of just the same variations of the same dark
Yeah.
colors. And then I stumbled on this dude. And I was already a big Sevendust fan. I'm going to show this up
Yeah.
here, but I'm going to show it up in the
Mhm.
but Sevendust, Cold Day Memory. This
Mm.
was released
2010,
20 yeah. Was
2010,
it?
2009,
Yeah,
2010,
it was
something like that.
early 2010, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this album was really influential to me in the sense
Mm.
that it was one of those that I bought because of the cover. Like I had already listened to Home. I've been a huge
Yeah.
fan of Sevendust for a long time.
Mhm.
But this one was the one that stood out because it wasn't all doom and gloom. It was still brutal and very metal. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got a metal caged heart, a steampunk heart encased in glass, and there's
Mhm.
the art on this is beautiful. And I
Thank you.
honestly I bought it for the cover, and it turned out to be one of my favorite albums from them.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be until 20 years later.
Yeah. Here I
Well,
am now.
actually, it couldn't have been.
Yeah. It's been a while.
10,
Sometimes it
12 or
feels like 20
Eternity.
years.
12, 10, 15 years later that I
Right.
would get to meet the person that was responsible for doing it.
Mhm.
In fact, even just this was what was in my own mind when my own band had artwork to make.
Oh, really?
And I designed our artwork with bright colors, whites and
Mhm.
reds and clear tones because I thought it alone would stand
Yeah.
out. Heavily inspired by this album cover by you.
Nice.
So again, thank you for doing that. And then
Wow.
when they released the vinyl, of course, had to have you sign it. But
I wanted that to be vinyl so bad when I was working on it too.
yeah,
Yeah. That was a fun one. Honestly, that album went through many changes. I had a lot of different ideas. One of them that I thought was gonna go through was, basically the band was gonna be frozen in ice inside a cabin, and then the cover of the album was a kind of a Wizard of Oz looking tree that was all frozen and crusty, and, they didn't th they feel that it fit them, which it probably didn't, and, it's but I wanted something that would pop off the shelf, a lot, and, John Conley, he wanted something iconic, but he didn't really have a specific idea of what he wanted, and so, the representative, Rafa, he would, talk back and forth to John and the rest of the band and get their ideas, and I'd submit some more, and they didn't like it, and they'd shoot it down, but that was just a normal process of it. I really wanted to give the band what they wanted no matter what. But I was just about to give up. Yeah, honestly, I was like, well, I've probably drawn about 30 of these things and they don't like any of these ideas. And then I was watching Frankenstein, the original Frankenstein. And then I starting to think about steampunk. And so I started picturing this heart and like heartbeat in ice. And I thought, well, what would that look like? And so I made this really quick sketch and presented it, and they go, "Oh, that's it." And I was like, "All right." And so now I got to focus on that cover, and I really wanted it to pop off the shelf because every time I get to work on an album, comic, a cover of any kind, I see what's kind of going on during the time that I'm working on it, and I want something that will compete with them on the shelf. I picture this art on the shelf before I really finish it. And yeah, that's why it probably jumped out to you
well, it
because it
worked on
was
me, yeah.
very different than most.
And like I said, it inspired my album
Mhm.
whenever it came to making my own artwork.
Thank
It
you.
was just like I wanted it to stand out,
Mhm.
and this was what was in my head.
Well, they were always one of my favorite bands. So when I got the opportunity to work with them, I thought this is awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Really
How were
great.
you approached to do this?
Well, actually, I'd already finished a part a music video for Avenged Sevenfold, so I kind of cemented my a relationship with that band just before this album. This was the first time I actually got to work on an album for a band like that. I did do an album for Michael Graves from the Misfits when I lived in Phoenix, but then nothing happened for a while,
Right.
and so I ended up when I was in Phoenix, I was promoting myself wherever I could, showing my art as much as I could, and I met the right people. And then when I moved back here, they called me like I was here. I was in Springfield like a month, and they said, "Hey, how would you like to do, some art for Avenged Sevenfold?" And I said, who's Avenged
Who's that?
Sevenfold? I had no idea because I mean, I've been raising kids and all that kind of
Right.
stuff, and even though I was always wanting to do album covers, I was concentrating more on like stuff that I already known, 80s stuff, Motley Crue and Def Leppard and all those kind of stuff. Kiss, Kiss
Right.
was huge to me. So
And of course those
yeah,
album covers weren't that
yeah,
great,
they
back
really
then.
weren't,
You
but
gotta admit, I
but
mean, none
boy,
of
they
those album
sure
covers
jumped
really
out at
jumped
you.
out at you. It was
Mhm.
always the super heavy bands that had
Yeah.
the Slayer,
Slayer, yeah.
Metallica. They all had the great cool album
Mhm.
covers. But
Yeah, toward the end of the '80s, Injustice for All and all that
yep,
came
Oh,
out, and it
yeah,
was
yeah.
but earlier, like, Kill 'Em All for Metallica, it's just a hammer with, it's graphical,
right. It wasn't
you
in
know?
really until
Yeah.
Ride the Lightning
Yeah, and
that you
even
started getting really
yeah.
cool graphics on
Mhm.
album covers. I mean,
Mhm.
Eh,
because the '80s bands, it was all about posting photos of themselves. There really
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
very
Definitely.
many.
Showing off their bulge.
Yeah, like
Well,
Wasp.
I mean, I
They
mean,
had their
That
you
is
had
amazing,
you
yeah.
had a con. I mean, I
Yeah.
like Poison. Poison had
Mhm.
controversial album covers where
Yeah.
they had to cut away from what was there and
Yeah.
make it just a bar of eyes.
Oh,
I think
right,
it was because it
yeah.
was too
Open up and say,
explicit.
"Ah."
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
Mhm.
mean that was probably the most controversial like hair band I think
Yeah,
that
there time.
really caught any flack. I mean, because
Yeah.
everybody else's albums, they were just
Yeah.
pictures of them. I mean, like I said, the metal
Yeah.
scene, the heavier stuff was when the graphics really
Yeah, they
started.
really did
They
start
pushed the
taking
envelope.
they sure did.
Metallica and Slayer and
Mhm.
But those albums, the one that were controversial was the one my old drummer's dad, who owned Stick It in Your Ear in
Mhm.
Springfield for a long time. He would go and sell those on eBay. Like
Oh,
yeah, he
yeah.
had his pants were too tight and you could see his junk.
Yeah.
So he would like mark up
Yeah.
banned on eBay and mark
Yeah.
it up like
Mhm.
400% and people just throw their money at it. So I mean,
Yeah.
there was
right.
definitely a market for that
I mean,
controversial stuff.
there
Mhm.
was. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
but as
But
far as imagery, like even
yeah.
like this, I mean, nothing really. There's you bought that music because you liked the
Mhm.
music.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The heavier stuff was more of a package deal. You liked the
Yeah.
Mhm.
music, but you also dug
Yeah.
the artistry that went with it.
Right.
So,
Well, you
Yeah.
always want the art to go with whatever's on the
mhm,
inside too. So I mean, it's like I always thought, when I got an album when I was a kid, it was like an event. You get
Mhm.
like,
Yep.
I got this
yep,
thing, and I'm like pouring over it. Molly Hatchet with the
Oh
Death
man.
oh
Dealer on it.
yeah,
There's
That
mm,
was the first one that did it to me. I saw that, and I was like, oh my god, I didn't
right.
even realize anything could be like that.
Yeah.
My dad would bring home books like Conan, the Savage Sword of Conan, and he had Omni, and he had all these other things, and he would like leave them on the table. And so that was a lot of my exposure too. And then Alice Cooper shows up, and he's on the Muppet Show,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I was like, "What?" I had no idea.
we
I
can
mean,
mix shock rock with the
yeah,
Muppets.
we were,
Dude, which is an adorable
yeah,
performance. He's still trying
Mhm.
to he's so young. He's
he
still trying to
is,
learn how to cape,
yeah,
but
yeah.
he does it, and it's a great
Well,
episode.
yeah, oh man, I swear, like time stood still when that came on the TV.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh. And then Kiss Meets the Fan of the Park, which,
Oh, dude,
I was a
dude,
kid. It was
that
terrible.
is it
It
was
was
a
the
horrible
worst
film,
thing ever, but it was
but it was
Gene Simmons
cool. Yeah,
blowing fire. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
what?
right. What is this? Yeah,
Yeah,
or yeah,
yeah, blood and
you had to
all
have all of
that.
that good stuff.
Yeah,
So before the Sevendust album,
yeah.
you did work with Avenged Sevenfold, correct?
Yeah, I did. I got hired in to do a lot. Yeah, a, a little piece of heaven, the music video, and Jimmy the Rev Sullivan. He had played it on the piano, just to, and it was a little different. And I'm like, man, the lyrics are well, they speak for themselves.
Yeah.
But he said he wanted something that looked like a corpse bride, and I was like, "Well, that's kinda claymation type,
Right.
stop motion animation." And I said, "Well, I tell you what, I'll do 2 backgrounds. If you like what you see, then we'll move on. I'll go ahead and do it." And it was at first, I believe it was gonna be, animation mixed with, footage of the band. And so I did the 2, submitted it with a joke because I honestly did not know how big Avenged Sevenfold was. No clue. I didn't hear Bat Country or anything. So, I made this joke and made fun of the lyrics, and it got a rise out of them. And so every time I did, they hired me, obviously, I mean,
Or make
it's
fun of
like,
the band, you're
yeah,
hired.
yeah, and so they was like, so, anyways, I turned in the 2 and they go, "Yeah, yeah, this is what we want." So every time I turned in one, I made like a little joke. Now, it was funny to me. I don't know toward the end if it was funny to everybody else, but I kept it going and throughout the whole thing, and I helped direct some of the how the video laid out a little bit. We had a lot of people kind of involved with this thing, and it was really cool. I got to work with the guys that I lived in, around in Phoenix that helped me get my career started. So, I'm still friends with all those guys. That's,
That's so
love them
That's
cool.
to
so awesome.
pieces. It's
Yeah.
So
great.
how did you get started? Were you in art careers from the jump? Or were you doing
Yeah.
something else and then you're like,
Well,
"Oh, this isn't for me," and you decided to go
w
to art?
oh, no, no, I always wanted to be an artist. When
Mm,
I was a kid, it's like 5 years old, I'm trying to draw Mr. Spock, and I'm trying to draw these faces and stuff, it was really and, I was like I was in kindergarten, I was like, "No, I'm gonna be an artist." I never changed. I mean,
mm,
my direction has kinda swayed,
right.
at excuse me, when I was a senior in high school, I wanted to do horror movies. I wanted to do
Mm,
all the prosthetic effects. We were talking earlier about like Tom Savini and all that. Those are huge influence to me.
mhm,
And so I would make things that resembled that. But
mhm,
then I also did like album cover style art.
mhm,
Because honestly, if you want to do album covers, you better start doing something that looks like an album cover.
Mhm.
A lot of people come up and they're like, "Hey, how do I get to do this? And how do I get this?" Like, well, you just draw it. You just
mhm.
do it.
Fake it till you make it.
Well,
Yeah.
kind of, yeah.
At
I
least
mean,
measure an album
yeah.
dimensions and start from there.
You want people to project themselves into whatever you're doing.
Mm,
You want
mhm,
it to speak to them loud enough that they want that to be their cover or art
mhm,
that's similar to it. But I had met the right people in Phoenix
mm,
when I was there, and they really did. I mean, I moved back to here, and I thought, well, I'm not going to do a lot of that. I thought about going back to tattooing. I thought about doing a lot of things,
mm.
and yeah, I got hired to do some theme park art, which I still work at.
What theme park is
Very
that? We'll name
consistent.
drop.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I don't we
You
not be
There's a
are we
few of
allowed
them.
to?
Yeah, we
we
can
can
name
we
drop.
can name
Oh,
drop
okay.
some. I've been doing work for SeaWorld, Busch
Mhm,
Gardens, Dollywood, Six Flags, and a variety of others
mhm.
with a company. So I'm not allowed to really put it on my social media. This
Right,
is
because it's
Mhm.
owned by
It's
yeah, it's
owned by
them as
owned
soon
by
as you
them.
them,
make it.
and
Yeah.
most of the things that I do, I mean, it could be a year, maybe even 2. So if I
Mm.
let the cat out of the bag, that would be really rude.
Oh,
Yeah,
because if
yeah.
Right.
you make a
Yeah.
new park map that shows the ride that hasn't been announced yet, then that's
Right, yeah, but most of what I'm doing is like
Mhm.
the mugs and promos, like, when they
Mhm.
did, Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City,
Yeah.
Mm.
the company got involved with making that, and I saw preliminary sketches and stuff about 2 years before they actually announced it, so it's like,
Mm.
you keep your mouth quiet,
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
so I never really talk about what I'm doing unless I'm doing it, a personal project.
Mhm.
Yeah, I really can't. I mean, I don't I think it would be a disservice to the people I work with
Right.
to
Sure.
just
But then
NDAs are normal. Like
yeah.
that
once
happens.
it's published, is it fine though?
Yeah, once it's published, I think, but I just
But do they
usually
tell you?
oh, yeah, I
Or
always know because
okay.
the company that I'm working with for,
Uh-huh.
they have it produced. So, all
Right.
these mugs, frames, water balls, things like that. You know,
Do they
it
send you a sample? You have just like
well,
a
there's samples everywhere. I've got
you got like a
some
closet full
yeah.
of dolphin
Well,
shaped
you
Yeah,
hats?
those
I
hats,
need
they
to
all fall
know.
out.
you can definitely there's several thousand pieces of art that I've done for these companies
Mhm.
collectively. And yeah, I can bore the heck out of you with thousands of pieces of artwork.
Right. But
Yeah.
do you do like billboards too and
If they want to use the art for that, then
yeah.
yeah. All the album covers and interiors and all that kind of stuff, I usually make those big enough so they can put it on a billboard. Like when Nightmare hit for Avenged
Mhm.
Sevenfold, I made sure that that piece was huge because I knew that they were going to advertise this
Right, it
big
might end
time,
up on the side of a bus.
and it did.
Designer
Right.
You know,
brain.
I know, yeah,
Always
so
yeah,
plan ahead.
yeah,
It's
you
chess.
better,
that's
yeah.
all kinds of
Well,
scales if you're,
yeah,
making the new hat pin for the employees to wear at the
yeah.
theme park versus if you're making something that's going on a bus,
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah.
detail level, you gotta
Yeah, I always work really big, even when I'm doing
Mhm.
traditional work, and most of my traditional work is personal work because
Okay.
usually when I get hired to do, say, an album, there's a really quick turnaround.
Mhm.
The worst one, as far worst,
Quickest.
the quickest turnaround was Avenged Sevenfold's Nightmare. The very first image, it was for their single,
Mhm.
and it was a screaming skull with the death bat kind of
Right.
floating out of it.
Iconic.
Mm.
Oh my gosh! Well, I did that in one night.
Yeah, of course you
I
Wow.
did.
one
That's
night
Of
probably
course
did.
you did.
why.
One take.
Yeah,
We're done.
they
That
call
desperate energy, man, that people
Right.
yeah.
see it.
I
So
well,
did they, like, know for sure what they
they
wanted
had
and that
no earthly clue what they wanted.
so
See,
it was, like, from the get-go,
right?
drafting, figuring
Yep.
out what in the world oh my
Jimmy the
That's
Rev
their
Sullivan.
brand, man.
Well,
That's crazy.
Jimmy
Right.
Jimmy passed away, so everybody was emotionally distraught. I just lost my dad like very like a month before, so I was
Uh-huh.
still grieving my dad. And then they come up and like Jimmy the Rev Sullivan died, and they're gonna they got to get this album out now because they actually
Mm.
finished it. And so they were like, it's kind of like
They
strike when the iron's
capitalized off
hot,
of it.
kind of, yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
That's what
yeah.
it was.
And
I mean,
so,
it's
which is
smart. I
completely
mean,
normal.
yeah.
I mean, when
Right.
Dimebag Darrell passed away, you
They
saw a lot of
pushed,
stuff with that. Yeah,
a lot
But
of
it's also
things.
it's a tribute to that
it is.
person,
It
and you
really
wanna get their
is.
Mhm.
work
You wanna
Yeah.
out,
get it
and
out there,
it
as
it
quick
does
as
them
Mhm.
more
possible.
justice than if wait 3 more years and
Oh,
everybody's it's
absolutely.
not fresh in their
They
mind.
did
Yeah.
that with Vinnie Paul.
Yeah. Oh my
When
gosh,
Vinnie
Vinny
passed
was
away,
that
he had
was
laid down all
yeah,
those tracks for that
yeah,
album, and it was
yeah.
all on the fence. Are they gonna really go in and do this?
He was
And
such a
they all
good
went in
guy.
there, recorded all of their
Yeah,
parts, and put the album out, and
Wow.
was
yeah.
like, that's how you do it, So
Vinny,
yeah, it was crunch time. They had to get in and just complete it, get it done.
yeah, they did definitely. And he was just a cool dude. I got to meet him on two occasions, and
Oh
he
yeah,
was nothing but gracious and kind to those around him.
I agree. I
Really liked
agree.
him.
2 occasions, but
Yeah,
twice.
yeah.
And
Probably right
actually,
next to
no,
each other,
Yeah,
and
it's
you didn't
probably on
even
the
know.
same
Yeah,
day,
may
just
have.
one
let
talked
me
to one
take
and
that
then
back.
talked to the other one.
It was 3
Mhm.
times. It was 3
Yeah.
times. Once on
Oh,
my
fine.
birthday,
Oh,
and then there was once at the Grand Sierra in Reno,
yeah.
and then a club show.
Hmm.
And
That's,
yeah, I mean,
a club show.
all 3
I
times.
like
Yeah.
those small.
It was a very
Yeah,
Mm.
small club.
that's cool.
And yeah, very, very
You
cordial.
can get more personal with all these
Right?
guys.
I
Mhm.
Yeah,
agree.
there's.
I
I
agree.
just love those. Like, well, Wednesday 13 usually plays at smaller places. He
Right.
doesn't have these big. He doesn't have a
Have you
big
done work for
stadium.
him?
Oh my gosh, I've done a ton of work for Wednesday
Oh,
Yeah.
13.
snap.
I love Joe Poole.
Right?
Honestly, Joe Poole is probably he was the one the most hands on with the things that I was doing because
Hmm.
I mean in the early times with working with him, it was the record label, and Joe was always out because he's a busy guy, right? So his record label was giving me the first few jobs, and then when they split, Joe was doing it himself, and so I got to talk directly with him,
With him, right?
and we bounced ideas off. The last one with the record label was Calling All
He
Corpses.
comes out with some great,
Yeah. Oh, he
great
really
album
does.
covers.
Yeah, he's awesome. Just
Did you get to work with him
mm,
when he was with the murder dolls?
Well, no. I
No?
mean, they did reform when during my time
Right,
with him, and some of the guys from Wednesday 13 as a band was in the Murder Dolls. Like,
right.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
because that split off.
yeah, and
Okay.
they just finished up a tour doing all the Murder Dolls music. I would have loved to have caught it, but I
Oh,
didn't get to see
I
it.
bet that
And
would have been
yeah, Women and Children Last and all
right,
that. It's really
right.
cool.
Great albums.
But he was very he knew what he wanted, and that was a huge help to me.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, especially
Yeah.
when you can talk directly to him.
Right. And
You know,
it
it's
would I
easier
would
to
get like
bounce
random
ideas off.
emails. Absolutely. Really liked working with him. I did oh gosh, I don't know what, 5 or I think I did 5 albums with him. Yeah. So, yeah. Scream Britain Scream
Great
and I
albums.
also did
So cool.
he also had he redid uh Zombie Maniac Spider Trash. He had a couple of that was an earlier band of
Right.
his, and I did his covers for that
Classic.
too.
You
Yeah,
know,
right.
classics.
Yeah, it's like,
Kelsey's
oh
like,
yeah,
I'm not
I
a
have
like
metalhead.
no idea what you're
I
talking
told
about.
you.
You could be
right.
like throwing darts at a wall and picking
Yeah.
random words, or like the refrigerator magnet poetry words, and that's kind
Those are the
of the
best.
equivalent.
Yeah,
Like we're
Maniac Spider Trash.
yeah,
metal. We're
Right.
all just nerds in metal.
yeah.
Like we,
Oh man, well, it's a
She's gonna
small
go. She's
community
gonna go
too.
home and she's gonna sit down. She's gonna
Yeah,
Google Wednesday 13, and
yeah.
then she's gonna be
Who's that
like,
guy?
"Oh
Yeah,
my god!"
good.
Oh
Yeah,
well.
Garbage Boot Knife Monster. It's my
Right.
favorite album. Like it's the same. I don't know, but it's awesome that like
Yeah.
Right.
people are excited about it. Okay, so I
Yeah.
have a question for you
Sure.
about working with clients because I've
Hmm.
worked before in really different industry than
Right.
that.
Hmm.
Sometimes you get somebody that says, I want these photos, I want this color scheme that's like
Right.
our brand colors.
Mhm.
I want big text and I want it to look really bright and airy
Yeah.
and I want it to, have this imagery. And then sometimes you get somebody that they look at your draft and they're just like, nope.
Yep.
And that's
It
all the
happens a
feedback
lot.
I
they
just
give
want
you.
it to. I just
so
need it
Yes.
to pop.
so
I love
need
it,
it
but
to
I'm not
pop.
in love with that.
right. Do
Right.
you
Yeah.
have a strategy for trying to like
Oh
pry some
man.
information out of that client? Or
There.
you don't have that
Yeah.
opportunity if you've got like
Yeah.
a middleman and you can't
Yeah.
actually access the final
That's
Well,
end
probably why it was
user.
so great with Wednesday, is because
yeah,
you
because you
could
could go
that's that
direct.
direct connect right
But
there.
these
Right.
guys that like, I mean, honestly, Sevendust didn't know what they wanted, so
Right.
it's just doing it and doing it and doing it. You're
Yeah.
trying to be creative. You're trying to appease everything. And I when I find out I'm going to work for somebody, or even if I suspect that it's in the happening,
Mhm.
there's been several bands that showed up and it just didn't work out, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It just, I still love all these
Is it more
bands.
rewarding when you get free reign to create like that, or is it
Man,
more
man.
rewarding when
Yeah.
they give you the information and say, "This is
And
kind
tell
of
me
what I
what you
want you
want.
to
Well,
create"?
I kind of like a little bit of a direction when it comes to
Right.
these,
Mm.
but I want to be able to have a lot of some wiggle room.
Right.
On Wednesday 13's m- Monsters of the Universe. I drew this thing. It was like Leonardo da Vinci's Anatomy, and it was
Mm.
all kind of sketched out, and it had all these monster pieces to it. And then he wanted to he wanted a planet for 13 different planets with 13 different monsters that he can auction off. And he's like, I don't really care what they are. But I thought, okay, he's really into classic monsters, so knowing him
Mhm.
and what he's drawn to, because I mean, I get like every album of if or their influences in order to kind of get inside their head. So I drew all
Right.
these classic monsters like redone, and then since there was 13 of them, I made some of them kind of funny to kind
Mhm.
of go with, because there's like a gray alien and he's got like a probe and things like that. It's like, but
That's so cliche.
yeah, yeah, really,
Classic.
really, yeah,
Right.
but it's like, okay, and then there's like a female vampire and
Mhm.
all this kind of stuff. And anyways, he didn't have an idea for the cover exactly. He didn't know and he ended up using that original Leonardo da Vinci Anatomy, but their special edition one or special vinyl cover was a
Mm.
patchwork of all the monsters that I had created, and then I put Wednesday or Joe Pool's face as a monster in the mass they're all kind of sewed to him like he's
Oh,
a
yeah.
Oh, was he
Frankenstein
like
looking
the
thing.
centerpiece, or is it like Where's
Yeah,
Waldo?
it's basically him, but he's got all these monsters that are attached to him. And I actually
Oh.
got that idea from an old Bernie Wrightson comic
Hmm.
that I had when I was growing up. God, I love Bernie, but he did this thing called Freak Show, and at the end of the thing, this man, basically killed all the freaks in his
Mm.
traveling circus, and they sought revenge. One sought revenge after him and kind of packed all of them
They
to
just
his
human
body.
centipeded him with
Mm.
all those.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I was like, that's where that idea came from.
Yeah.
And it worked for it. So you grab
Yeah.
ideas from everywhere too.
I
So,
think that's something you can apply to
mm,
anything where you're making art that's not just for you.
yeah.
Anything where you're making stuff for other people or trying to sell it is trying to get inside their head by looking
Yeah.
at stuff that they've liked in the past, or if
Hmm.
you have the opportunity to actually connect
Yeah.
and converse with them. And I think that makes such a better experience for your client
Yeah.
too, because they don't want to sit there and nope 30 pieces before they
Well,
find the
a
thing that
lot of
works
them,
either. Like if
yeah,
they have
they don't
time
have
to sit
time.
down, like,
Yeah, they don't have
yeah, they don't
time
have
if
time, but
they're having their business,
right,
Mhm.
and just like art, I mean, it's a business, and you
of
better
course,
treat it that way. Um, yeah, I mean, they don't have time to deal with that. That's what they hired you for.
right.
So if they just say nope and walk away, it is a little frustrating because
Mm-hmm.
but you try to drag some information at them. But if that's all you're going to get, then you just keep doing until it doesn't work for you anymore.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And if it just gets to a wall where it's like, well, I can't please this person, then it might be suggested that you part ways and maybe
Yeah,
you
maybe your
hire
style is just
something
not for
else.
them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
and
That's
that's
fine.
okay too because you're it won't be for everybody.
Yeah.
The first review that I got off of this was so negative I couldn't even breathe. I was afraid I'd never
From the
work in the
band or
sound again.
just from a
No, the band
random
loved it.
person? Oh, okay.
It was a website that I won't that'll remain nameless. They
Oh,
are still
We won't
existing.
name drop.
Yeah,
worst website
If
ever.
you insist.
and they basically
Terriblewebsite.com.
well, I was like,
Right.
right, that
That's it.
Oh.
anyways, I was expecting a review of the album, on the
Right.
music and all that kind of stuff, and it literally opened up and said how much it hated the cover. I was like, "Dang," and I'm like, "Oh,
Of this one or the
yeah,
fir
that one."
Why isn't it black with a skull on it?
Right, yeah.
No.
Right.
So so I got on the phone and I called my representative. He goes, "Hey, the band liked it. The label liked it. We all love it. It's going to be their whole theme of their stage." He goes, F those guys,
Yeah.
Yeah.
consider the source.
Uh,
And you've really got that stuck with me. It still sticks with
Yeah.
me because,
That stings, yeah.
He's not
oh
your
man,
buyer.
yeah, he's not
Yeah.
the
He's just
audience.
some grumpy guy with
Yeah.
a microphone. Like
Anytime you're sticking anything out in public for scrutiny
Right.
and all that kind of stuff, you're going to have 50% of the people love it and 50% of the people like it at best. And so they're
right.
going to call you every name that they can too, a
Right.
hack or whatever.
Or 2% hate it and they're just real loud.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, you get
I
a
think
lot of
that's pretty
that
common.
too. Yeah.
Like, there are 2 other albums from Sevendust where
Mhm.
I look at the cover and I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah, a little weak.
Like
Two
even their
specifically.
debut wasn't that great.
No,
They
Oh,
didn't
no, it
really
was
care
like
for that. It was
very
horrible. Yeah.
digital, very
it was like
Yeah, it wasn't.
Photoshop 1, like
Mhm.
warp filter or like
Yeah.
Mhm.
a black, the one I'm
Mhm.
thinking was from Animosity with I
Oh,
don't know
yeah.
if there's a
Yeah.
story behind it,
Mhm. Well,
but it was odd.
it was
It was
odd,
odd to me.
because it was, like, put together real Photoshop, like, cut
Well,
out, like
there was like a kid in the
yeah.
front and there was like
Mhm.
a African tree or something. It's
Yeah.
something that with some birds. And then the other one was the red background with the black 7 in the front,
Oh, right,
which was
yeah.
a great
Mhm.
album, but for me it was just
Yeah.
like, man, that's like graphic design like high
Yeah.
school stuff. And
Missed
like how
opportunity.
Well, you get a lot of
Simplicity,
and it's
that.
though.
like and,
I mean, it's no
and I get
different
it.
than the
Maybe I
Metallica
was
Black
just
Album.
jealous because at that time I'm thinking,
Yeah.
man, I could have done this.
No,
But
it's a
all of it is bolder than just like Michael Bolton glamour shots.
Right. And
'Cause
right, yeah.
again, obviously it worked well and they
Yeah.
loved it and that's perfectly fine,
Yeah.
but I was looking at it for the first time going, "Oh,
Yeah.
maybe I'm trying too hard."
And at least it's not AI.
You were just comparing.
Yeah,
No
you're right.
AI,
Yeah.
That's
But
all.
they also there's a budget behind all of
Sure.
it, and
right.
sometimes it's just not in the budget to have a lot of work. With
Especially when
these
you're
guys, I gave
newer.
them quite a
Yeah.
bit. I did an illustration for every song, and I wanted to. You
They
know.
pay
Yeah,
you one
yeah.
lump sum for it, or
Yeah,
you get
yeah.
royalties for it.
I get a lump sum most of the time. Yeah, I mean there are there are ones that I have worked for that you do get some royalties
Kickback
for,
for it,
Like,
right?
if they put it on the
but not very
T-shirts and
often.
stuff, then sometimes they'll, like, tip
Well,
you later
yeah,
or no?
sometimes they're not. Particularly, some of the bigger companies, they retain the rights to the art, and
Mm,
I don't print it. I don't compete with it. They bought their art fair and square, and all
mhm.
that, and
Mhm.
you've got to cater to them.
Yeah.
You know, I've had things that, like I say, that I get like royalty checks when they were, when they were busy, but
Right.
yeah,
And it's more practical. They
yeah.
don't wanna hire somebody full time to count how many
No.
pennies you get from
Oh,
every
and then
hat
they
and
had,
every
all the
shirt and
paperwork, and
yeah.
I get it,
Mail you a check
yeah.
for 49 cents every now and then because they
Right.
sold another hat.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's what I was curious when this was
Mhm.
released on vinyl, which
Mhm.
was significantly longer
I didn't get
after,
paid for it. They
and
bought
then
it already.
also Avenged Sevenfold, you've been
Mhm.
retapped to do special edition, like, re-releases of, like, then there was an anniversary
Well
box, wasn't there, with a bunch
well,
of cool coins and stuff in it?
that one was actually, the special edition for, yeah, Hail to the King.
Yeah,
So it was that treasure chest, and that man, that was so fun to work on, but, so I got paid for each piece that I did for it,
sure, okay.
and it was a fair wage, for all of it, and, but yeah, they own it, you know?
And then
Mhm.
another band, another titan in the industry that
Mhm.
everyone knows is Disturbed.
Yep. Yep.
And I know I'm familiar with all the artwork that they actually traveled on stage
Mhm.
with, all the stage stuff.
Right.
So because before you mentioned that you were smart enough to know that everything that you make it huge so they can use it, and then sure
Mm.
enough,
Yeah.
they're like it's an entire backdrop for a
Yeah.
stage. Is so
Mhm.
what came of your relationship with Disturbed? What was it exactly you did, and how did that
Well
come about?
those guys, because I was working with Avenged Sevenfold, and they toured together at one point.
Mm.
They did a Uproar tour, and, man, I got to meet David Draymond and Dan Donegan and the other guys, and, anyways, the same representative that worked with Avenged Sevenfold worked with, Disturbed as well, because I mean,
Mm.
he's on tour with them.
Mhm.
And so, I got to do a decade of Disturbed. It was the 10th anniversary of the band, and, I had to I worked on that, and it sat for nearly 2 years. I couldn't tell anybody
Wow.
that I worked for Disturbed
Oh,
for
no.
2 years. I was like,
Ooh.
"Oh my gosh," and that's, like, one of my favorite bands, and the guys are just awesome. I love David Draymond, I love Dan. They were really nice to me, my son, well, all the bands that I've worked for. I mean, I have not had a problem with any of them.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
They've been nothing but good to me. Avenged Sevenfold too. I mean, those guys, it was weird meeting those guys because it was like they were so familiar to me by the time I did get to meet them
Mm.
because I had studied about them. It was like meeting somebody like an old friend from college,
Mhm.
and they treated me just great.
That's
My
awesome.
son was with me, and he was like, I don't know, 10 or 11 at the time, and yeah, Dan Donegan's taking them all around, and
Was he old enough to know it was cool?
oh yeah,
Or did he
yeah,
okay.
he
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
definitely
yeah,
like little
just totally,
metalhead Disney
yeah.
"Yes,
World.
this is so cool. I got
He
the
yeah.
coolest dad ever."
Yeah,
Who needs a picture of
right.
Cinderella when you can get a picture of the Avenged Sevenfold?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Who
Yeah,
needs
that
Disney World?
but, yeah, it was just been awesome, but with these guys,
Yeah. So then
yeah,
when you do
lucky.
those extra illustrations, like,
Mhm.
for the songs and
Yeah.
stuff, do they sometimes end up putting that in the little
Oh, yeah.
what's the little paper fold out
Yeah,
thing
The
called that
field
you
actually
wear?
art,
actually,
the
they're
Yeah,
insert.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think they did it on this one, so I've got, they're all right here.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
because, like, as someone I miss that about CDs
oh,
and being able to
man.
open up the little
Did you do the
booklet and
thank you
look at all the
card?
lyrics and
I
all the
didn't do the
You
thank you
didn't?
card, no.
the thank you
You
card.
didn't give me the
Uh,
extended warranty?
no,
Oh,
no,
Ex
well.
sorry, man.
Well, now see,
Sorry.
that's an opportunity. You
So
could be
lame.
making
Right?
more money if
I
you
Yeah.
know,
offered
what
an
the heck?
extended
Yeah,
warranty.
I know. I
I
mean, this is what, is 80 pound stock?
You
That's
know what? Once when I started trying to get a job and doing any of this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
I worked for a junk mail firm that basically, they
Uh,
yeah, and I would check.
you were designing, like, the fake checks and crap
Well,
they
I
mail
wasn't
you to
designing
get
it.
life insurance?
I was even a little more lame than that.
Oh, wow.
I
It's
was
there's something below that.
yeah,
he was
I
Stamper
was
guy?
well, I was
Right? He
checking all
designs
of
the
the fine
envelope.
print. So all the little
The
fine
only person that ever read the fine print, it's you.
I've done it.
You're the
Oh
I've
my
done it.
chosen one.
god.
I've
I
done it.
thought not
Yeah.
even half stitching the
Oh,
perforation on him.
man.
No, you had to be
But
that guy.
I would check the art files, because there was other artists in the thing, and I would get that, and I'd get the parameters of the thing, and I'd make sure that it was right. and I'd send it on, and I'd have to sign my name to it. So if any of those price points that was in you can get
It
sued.
comes back on
Mm.
you. Man, I'd
Yeah,
be so tempted to just
it was
mess with it.
so stressful. I was like,
Yeah.
I would go, I would work late, and then I'd go blow some steam. Because Alice Cooper had has a restaurant in Phoenix called
Mm,
Cooperstown, and so I would go there and I would draw the bands on stage and goof off, and I just had that was me, because my kids and my wife at the time they were in bed, so I'm like out there and trying to meet people and kind of got known as that guy, but yeah, it was
right?
that's yeah. So that when I was checking that stuff during the day, I was having fun at Cooperstown at night. Yeah.
So your connections and stuff actually, and it was probably just your way of. And I saw this in person, for example,
Mhm.
outside of just music alone, there's also like anytime you were a fan of many things. Anytime you
Oh
had an
yeah.
opportunity to meet somebody
Mhm.
and shake their hand.
Yeah.
For example, we did a small little convention in Lebanon, Missouri,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
was like little tiny thing. We were positioned right across from each other. I got Potbelly Mammoth. You had your sarcophagus of awesome prints.
Right?
You had your Alice Cooper pieces, which I
Uh,
think that piece
I
was
think I was
actually
like,
the cover that you did for there was a biography book that
yeah,
was
it's
written about him.
biography about
And
yeah.
so you had prints of that. You had one of,
Mhm.
Elvira. Did
Yep.
you do work for Elvira, or
Well, it was
was that
indirectly. I mean, I gave her the pieces and stuff, and she knew I existed, I
okay?
guess. I mean, from
So
that time,
But
but
you weren't commissioned.
but I was not commissioned. It was not an official commission, but
Mhm.
yeah, she was really sweet to me when I met her
That's
too.
cool.
that show
Really
in
liked her.
particular,
Yeah.
both Mark Dodson,
Yep.
who we'd hang out with a few times, he'd come through.
Oh
He was
man.
the, Salacious Crumb in Star Wars. He also did the puppeteering and the voices of the Gremlins,
Yep.
and,
Very a variety of others. Like this.
right, he was
Yeah.
kinda Jim Henson's, well, other dark side,
Right?
guy,
His
but
alter
Yeah.
yeah,
ego.
and then he was a guest there, Mark Dodson, and then, yeah, Felix Silva,
Felix.
who was
Phila. Mhm.
Scylla, sorry,
That's all right.
who was,
Cousin.
Cousin It
And he was
in
also Twicky for Buck
in
Rogers.
Buck Rogers, that's
Yeah.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Beady, beady, beady.
So,
Yeah, that
Right?
he
one.
showed up,
Wow.
we were chatting, Friday
Mhm.
setup, we're like we always
Yeah.
do, just reminiscing, checking out all the new stuff he had on his
Mhm.
table. And, I was like, "Dude," he goes, "I got this new one." And he holds up this pa was it traditional painted or was it
No,
digital?
it was digital painted, Cousin It.
Of Cousin It.
Yeah.
And, he goes, "I'm gonna go give this to Felix, and,
Yeah.
I'm gonna see, I hope he digs it." And
Yeah.
you go over there, you give it to him. I see from a distance his eyes go,
Yeah.
and then immediately when you leave the table, he
Mhm.
and Mark come in, they chat for a second, and
Yep.
then they come to your table, and I
Yeah.
got pictures on my cell phone.
Yeah,
I'm
I
just sitting there
still have
like
that picture.
and
Mhm.
they probably chat with you for like 2 hours.
Oh, yeah.
By the end of it, I was like, "So how'd that go?" He goes, "I think really well."
Yeah.
And from that moment on, because
Yeah.
you gifted fan art, like, "Hey, I'm a
Mhm.
fan, love your work, thank you
Yeah.
so much for being here.
Mhm.
I made this for you."
Yep.
You ended up being hired to do their
Yeah.
art prints for their touring
Well
ever since, wasn't it?
I did, Felix, he ended up buying the Cousin It thing so he could
Mm.
sign it on at his, table. But, so he would order directly from me, and I'd print them, and they were all limited edition. I'd sign my name, and then he'd sign his name, at his booth. It was like a premium print for him.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
then he goes, "Man, he we got to be really good friends." And he would call, and he would keep me on the phone for an hour. Guy was the funniest dude. He was the best.
We didn't have many lines in the
Oh my
No.
show, so
god, I love that guy. Anyways, he would call, and then he hired me to do a Twicky one, and that went through some changes because Gil Gerard I drew Gil Gerard in it because I felt like it needed Buck Rogers in it.
Mm.
Just so he's like into this nebula, and it was kind of funny because Twicky had me Twicky, Felix had me change Twicky's face a little bit. He changed the pitch, but that was it.
Mm.
Gil Gerard didn't like that I put him in this nebula and he was red. So he asked that it made some adjustments and stuff. So I kind of got like indirectly with Gil Gerard talking.
Yeah.
And I never met him. I mean, well, I did, but he wouldn't know me from Adam. It's just now, but yeah,
Well,
so it changes.
I was really impressed and really, really proud of how that
Mhm.
unfolded, and it
Yeah.
was inspirational just because it's like even somebody who does all the work that you do,
Mhm.
and you get to interact with all these really cool people
Yeah.
that you still had moments where you, like a kid, you were like,
Oh,
"I'm a fan.
yeah.
I love your work.
Yeah.
I hope I hope you take that." And then
Yeah.
it turned around for you. You had
Mhm.
a very strong relationship with with the both of them.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we
Lost
lost
both of them.
we lost both of them. Mark, we lost here somewhat recently.
Yeah.
And
A
that
couple
was
months ago.
both times the first thing I thought of was, "How's David?"
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I had spent time with Mark in across the state. He had me do a convention with him, about a month before he passed, and, man, yeah, it was nice to see him. I'm glad I got to spend time with him.
Mhm,
Uh, we got to catch up because, the 3 of us were really good friends, when we were around, we'd go to, breakfast and lunch and all that kinda stuff, and, those guys would just make me laugh. My face would just hurt by the time they were done with me. But yeah, we got to talk about Felix, and then because I went through so many things between, right around Felix's death, I ended up
mhm.
getting a divorce, and life changed dramatically. That's why I haven't taken on so much work in the last 3 years. I reset myself, took care of business basically, and now I'm taking off again. I'm gonna concentrate more on my art and what I wanna do.
Well, I know
Mhm.
you've
Oh,
been
good.
Yeah.
we've been following you along with you, and
Oh,
everybody's, like,
thanks.
really proud of you, man,
Well, thank
and
you. I
we're really
appreciate
glad
it.
that you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I got kind of, carried away a little bit. I run a lot. That has been, man, what a healing. It really has because I do trail running and I do some street running. I started getting more into scuba diving and then
Mm.
bike riding. I ride with this group on Wednesday, and man, yeah, everything I can do to keep up. But they actually made me healthier. I quit smoking. I quit. I started eating better and all that. And my health. I don't. I'm going to be 55 in July, and I don't think I've been this healthy since I was in my 20s,
Yeah, you look younger than
literally.
me. I mean, you can
Oh,
do all
thanks,
that
appreciate
stuff,
it.
better you than me, but, like, I know what I'm up against.
Yeah,
Eh.
man. Well, I mean, it's just, I broke my arm right at the beginning of COVID and
Mm.
Oh,
used
that's
that to
right.
start getting
Yeah.
healthy. Yeah, because, I mean, yeah, it took out everything because I was so
You're
busy up
right.
to that
Yeah, that's right.
point.
You were drawing with your other hand, weren't
Yeah,
you?
I actually was drawn left-handed for a little
Oh,
bit.
Drawing
wow.
crooked dolphins with
Yeah.
your left
Oh,
hand.
Yeah.
well.
Well, so long as
Well,
they didn't show their
yeah.
teeth. I don't know if we could
Well,
talk about
I was
that, but
tr
yeah.
I
I've heard
I
that story.
oh, man. Well, I was trying I the first thing I did was I did a 2,000-piece jigsaw puzzle with my left hand to kinda get coordination with it,
Oh, that's
and then
smart.
I did a very large Enterprise from Star Trek, and that was really difficult
Like
just doing
Legos
left hand.
or like a
Yeah, it's like
model
a Lego.
building
Yeah,
kit?
Yeah.
it's a the Lego competitor, but it was, there was like
Uh-huh.
1,500 pieces. It's huge.
So you're just building that muscle memory and
Yeah,
yeah,
and then I did a cover
we do
with my
some
left
stuff like
hand.
that too, like as tattoo
Yeah.
artists, just like, trace the lines in the
Oh, yeah.
notebook until you train your brain like, okay,
Mhm.
now it finally knows how to make a straight
Yeah,
line.
you've gotta people don't realize how much goes into it, like, leading up to I mean, you're before you're tattooing anybody,
Mhm.
you know what you're doing,
Mhm.
most
Ideally.
ideally. I have known some that didn't,
Depends what
but
state you live in. The
yeah.
Mhm.
regulations may vary.
Well, and
Right.
right, that's so true. Because when I did it, like Oklahoma, you couldn't tattoo in Oklahoma. It was,
Mhm.
considered, some kind of form of torture or something. So, yeah,
Oh,
you literally
Perfect.
couldn't do it.
bunch of
And but
masochists.
they would send they there was places that actually manufactured ink that were out of Oklahoma, and I would order my ink from Oklahoma City because I was living in Kansas at the time.
Mhm.
Yeah, started doing that.
So
Can't
how did you get started tattooing? Where does that fall in the
Oh my
timeline
Yeah,
of
let's
your
gosh.
start from
art?
the beginning.
I wanna hear
Well,
about this.
well, the tattooing is, yeah, I have a couple of degrees in college. I've got a
Okay.
bachelor's of fine art in art
Mhm.
and a bachelor's of science and technology with a major in commercial graphics, and then I have a
Mm.
variety of, minors.
Mhm.
Well, nobody would take me serious and nobody would hire me, even with all those degrees. I didn't take the time to make contacts. I was too busy raising kids, right? So, I'm like, "Man, I'm doing I'm retouching photographs for a living for this place out of Pittsburgh, Kansas,
Mhm.
and I was working my butt off all the time. Well, I went to visit my father-in-law, and he had bought a bunch of tattoo equipment.
Mhm.
And he said, "Hey, you're not gonna leave this place until you tattoo my leg." And I'm like, "The hell if you say. I'm not tattooing anybody. I didn't wanna scratch him." I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, I mean,
Mhm.
we got along and stuff. No, but
You
I
drew the
was like,
line,
"I'm
sir.
not gonna
Right.
I'm not
Yeah,
gonna
that's
t"
a jump, like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
you're like,
like,
"I'm not" if, like, somebody asked you to do brain surgery,
yeah,
"I'm not
I had
qualified."
no idea. He showed me how to work the thing, and it was old school too. It was, it was flats.
Mhm.
So, I know that
Mm.
those I mean, you move that wrong, you're gonna
You're
cut
gonna slice
somebody.
Right,
somebody open
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
straight up.
So
Yeah.
he's like, "Hey," he just gives me a bunch of flats, and he has me color this thing, and I was like, "What the" and I did it because, I was getting ready to leave, and he goes, "No, no, no," and he had it all set up. So I did it, and I was like, "Huh." And then I tattooed my leg.
Mhm.
I did a little seahorse, and, on my way home, people were like, "Hey, where'd you get that done?" I'm like, "Oh."
I
Well,
did
I
it.
didn't wanna tell
My
him,
father-in-law's
It's like, "Yeah, I
basement.
tattooed
Right.
myself." Yeah, exactly,
Do you
and
So
still have
wait,
it? Is it still there?
yeah, it's still there. It's terrible,
we'll have
but
to share a
it's right
picture of
there.
it. It's a
It's bled over. It's
It's
old
got some
ink.
That
miles
doesn't
on
look
it.
like a scratcher tat.
It's
Like, you could have
yeah,
told us it was
Mm.
from a shop, and you're like,
yeah,
"Yeah,
David's second tattoo.
man.
So was
yeah."
he a tattoo artist or he just bought the
No, he
equipment
just
for
bought the
funsies?
equipment. Yeah, he was thinking he was gonna go ahead and do that,
See,
Ah,
things never
and
change. They
yeah,
just buy it
just
just
buy
because
it.
they think they can do. I'm
Yeah.
gonna
like,
buy
this
this
seems
and do
Oh,
it
cool.
man, yeah, and
I'm
there's
gonna be
and
good
have
no,
at it because I
no
bought
there's
it.
clue.
no
And
background
when
behind
was
it.
this?
None.
Oh boy, when is this? This is pre-Phoenix, so I think that would have been 2003 or 4.
I graduated that year.
Wow.
Yeah, somewhere in there,
So
and
how long did you do that?
nearly
Were
10
you
years.
were, like, in a shop
I
and
was in a shop for a short time.
Mhm.
I was working in a shop in Phoenix,
Mhm.
and I didn't care for it. I'll just be honest.
Mm.
We were not in the greatest area. Hookers would come in there and they'd want tattooed, and it I wasn't used to this.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I really just wanted to mellow out, do my art. It was never my passion,
Right.
but I
You
don't
weren't part of
think
the live fast, die hard scene, and
right,
when you're in a
yeah.
shop that's that,
And we'd have the
it's
Hells Angels driving through the back door, the shop would open up and they'd
mhm.
come in. Like that was intimidating for a guy that grew up in Kansas. Like,
Sure.
yeah, I ain't gonna do that. So, and no offense to any of them at all. They were actually very nice to me.
Mhm.
And but I just didn't want to do that kind of work.
Right.
So I kept it on the side. I
Mhm.
did it for like 10 years
Mhm.
on the side. It was always to supplement my income.
Mhm.
I've always had something to supplement my income because I like consistency with getting
Mhm.
paid. I mean, when I had kids, they had to eat.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
it was like, if somebody gives you a job, you're doing it.
Right.
And if you're going to stay up all night, that's happening.
Starving
Right.
artist is a little
It's
different when you're
starving artists
Mhm.
is
responsible for multiple mouths.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah, right. And yeah, definitely I knock on wood, I haven't had a problem with being a starving artist.
Mhm.
I didn't make a lot of money off of I mean, by way of comparison to some things,
Mhm.
it it paid the bills. I'll put
Right.
it
Sure.
that way.
Did you do an apprenticeship at any point?
I act
Mhm.
partially. I did an apprenticeship for a few weeks in Phoenix just to make sure that I
At
knew what
that
I was
shop?
doing at that shop. So to make sure that I knew what I was doing. But
Sure.
I had already been
Mhm.
tattooing for a few years prior to it.
Like scratcher, like on
Yeah,
your own
scratch
kind of
art.
scratch
Yeah,
art?
yep, yep, sure did.
You
Yeah,
some
I'd go to their house. And,
we talk a lot of shit about scratchers, but
oh yeah,
it's a very common story.
well
Like,
Mhm.
there's
yeah.
so many people that they're
Hmm.
just and I will always
Hmm.
have a soft spot for anybody
Yeah,
who just does what they have to do to at least establish themselves in something.
yeah.
Mhm.
I will always encourage, okay, at a certain point, you're gonna have to realize that there's a better way, and that everything you think you know, you're probably gonna have to unlearn and do it correctly.
It's true.
But I will always have that respect for anybody who's got the
Hmm.
fearlessness and the tenacity to at least try to make something happen for
Yeah.
themselves.
Right.
Well, and I didn't even know I didn't know the world of it.
Sure.
and
Well,
a lot of the thing you got to find out somehow.
right. I
But
was fortunate that
yeah,
at least I had a location, at least a place
hmm
to basically I was invited to a sandbox and yeah, I felt like, all right, here's your tools. Don't bury yourself
right,
alive,
you're right.
which we talked about
Yeah.
that at a
Oh
convention.
yeah.
And that was the exact story you shared with me. Is
Yeah.
like, look, man, don't feel heartbroken if you feel like this is yet another thing,
Yeah.
another dart that's not going to stick quite like what,
Yeah.
because it didn't for you.
Exactly.
But,
Yeah.
I don't know, I just thought that was so fascinating that there was a time where
Mhm.
you jumped in and gave it a shot,
Yeah.
and it was very
Oh, that's
brave of you to be able to, because
yeah.
I have the luxury of being able to walk away,
Yeah. Well,
and yet I
that's
still
good.
didn't because I wanted to respect it and give it its
Yeah.
time. You weren't in that same position. Like,
No.
you were prepared to do something else,
Mhm.
but you had to have your pieces in,
Yeah.
like, in
Mhm.
place ahead of time, and
Absolutely.
I think I don't know, I admire the hell out of the
Yeah.
fact that you were able to jump in, give it a shot, especially in that environment, and then
Yeah.
still like, "No, this isn't for me," but still
Yeah.
keep your wits
Yeah.
Mhm.
to move on to something else.
Yeah. It's always you got to look at everything as you don't know what the future is gonna bring. I mean,
Sure.
I I said, a little bit ago that, I went through a massive change 3 years ago with my life.
Mhm.
Mhm.
If somebody would have told me 4 years ago that I'd be, doing what I'm doing now and in the position that I'm in right now, I would have laughed in their face and never believed it. Um, you know, eh, when I was in high school, working for a band was a pipe dream. You're not going to get that. Nobody gets that. You got to live in, New York or California to get that, not be some kid from Cherryvale, Kansas.
Right.
So, that's, yeah.
Well, I may be stepping out of line here, and we'll
Mhm.
probably edit this out, but I'm pretty sure that if you ever really wanted to reconsider stepping into tattooing again
Mhm.
in a much better environment,
Yeah. Well, the
you know,
equipment's better than what I had, that's for
Right.
sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
You
we
don't have to
may
make your
have
own
Yeah.
needles.
we may have an open invitation to the
Yeah.
sandbox if
No,
you
that'd be
wanted to
fun.
pick it up again
Give it a
You never
go.
know. I won't rule it out. Yeah, but I definitely would go with an electric machine and not some with cams and the flats.
So
You
future
know.
Nate, remember to double check with everybody if we need to edit this
Right.
out.
Right.
Yeah,
But
there
I
you
don't.
go.
But I still
That'd be
I'm
fun.
confident.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
All
But
right.
no, dude, it's been a huge honor,
Well, thank you.
like just to know you, and I know that
Mm,
being a fan is one thing, but every time as many years as we've been around each other and like
yeah.
getting to do these events and stuff, I always learn something from you. You always have some kind of perspective. Being another
Mm.
guy that's like, I don't know what I am. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, so I'm just gonna get good at as many things as possible
That's
just to
right.
be useful. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's guilt driven, if
Yeah.
that's
No.
just you're just that curious all the
I'm
time.
always
Column A, column
curious.
B. Yeah.
Yeah. Always
But I
curious.
definitely identify with you, and
Nice.
I don't know, I've always admired your work, and again, just knowing how much of my history growing up and influence and stuff, like you were at the helm of behind some of it,
Yeah.
it's just, and I hope it continues.
Well,
I
thank
but
you.
also I'm so glad that you found a place where you're able to take care of yourself and understand your place and your value in yourself.
Yeah.
You're inspirational, like, and that's something that I feel like there's a lot
Mm.
of really cool people
Mm.
around here, especially that don't even
Yeah.
know that you know I don't know, these important people are right next door to him.
Man. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
And like you bump into you at a comic shop casually, like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?"
Right.
And you're
I
just,
Or
I
they
love
bump into you underneath
yeah.
Table Rock Lake,
You're
you're
right.
right.
just minding your
Right.
business, scubaing
"Oh,
along,
is this
and
your
Genuine
rock? Oh, you can't hear
yeah.
me. Never
But
mind."
generally speaking, I mean, I really like people. I like getting around people, I don't isolate myself,
Mhm.
and honestly, if you're gonna have this kind of career and you're gonna have to, work with the public, it's a good thing to be is social and knowing how to
Mhm.
talk to people and
Mhm.
realizing that everybody has a story and everybody means something and yeah, it's just
Spoken
See,
like a
I
tattoo
just love
artist.
it.
right.
I
Right.
You too, kids, can
It's
draw for rock stars.
it
Yeah.
seems like that's, like,
Yeah,
almost as valuable as the artistic skill itself because you wouldn't
yeah,
get there if you hadn't had the drive
mm,
to be connecting to
yeah,
people and then connect to the people they know and then connect to the
mhm.
people they know and then
It's all
building
about
those
marketing.
relationships and
Mhm.
Well,
understanding
Well,
them and
you
then
are selling yourself as
Yeah.
much as you are your
right.
own
And then
work.
the tenacity to keep going when they tell you no
Yeah,
30 times because there's not very many artists
mhm.
yeah,
that would take more than 2 nopes, let alone
Yeah,
Your
30.
there's
discipline to
So
draw the line
yeah,
that's
where you
a
they definitely need to have thicker skin if they're gonna be, putting their I
yeah.
mean, if they wanna make any money
In
and a
commercial,
career out of
yeah.
it, yeah, there's gonna be somebody that's gonna love you, and there's gonna be somebody that's always gonna, not, and that's okay, you
Right.
know, if if your client says, "No, I want that to be green and not red," then you damn well better turn it
yeah,
green.
hopefully you
Mhm.
made a separate layer and you can just change it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, a little
Plan
Before
switching,
you
yeah, a
ink
little
it.
plan
switching,
ahead.
right? Yeah.
That's
I like
right.
Chess.
to
If you think they're gonna even remotely think they're gonna wanna
Yeah,
change that, just separate
yeah,
layer. You
just
yeah.
never
think ahead.
I
Yeah.
like to do it the way they ask and then
Mhm.
the way I want it to be, and I'll be
I've
like,
done a lot of that.
Mhm.
I did
Mhm.
I did the things you asked for. I've got it here. I think this
Yeah.
is really great, but you
Yeah.
wanna look at this other
Look at
option is on the table,
Yep.
and then they're always like, yeah, option column B, give me column
Yeah.
B."
Yep.
I've done that a lot, and that
Where the
really
scale makes
does
sense and the colors are interesting and there's contrast.
well, it also I mean, it shows your value as and the fact that you are able
Right.
to think and you're really cared about their project enough to
Right,
do
yeah, it's like,
another
"I
piece.
listened, I did the thing, but, like,
Yeah.
maybe this is also"
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's
and sometimes you don't have to, sometimes it works out
sometimes you
fine,
don't.
but
Sometimes you don't
yeah.
have time because, I mean, I look at every piece of art that work that I've done, and I would change something on virtually everything. But there's a time that you have to just stop because and move on.
what deadlines
That's
are good for.
that's
Yeah,
more
That's
forced as
the
a
yeah,
tattoo
critical
artist.
self right
yeah. You
there.
guys are. I mean,
That's
That's forced in our
You
yeah,
gotta know
environment.
when to step away and go,
hmm
"Okay, that's
yeah,
that."
Everybody's butt falls asleep eventually, you can't keep them in the
right.
tattoo chair
Well,
forever.
that's
Exactly.
something that we
Yeah.
teach in Kaiju all the time, though, is
hmm
like, you give us a month deadline. You think you're doing us a favor. We're going to spend every day up until the last 2 days
Yeah.
worrying and sweating and losing sleep
Mhm.
You
over it,
literally
and
can.
then knock it out that day.
I used to make
And
myself sick over this. I literally was turning green in my chair before I broke my arm and changed my habits.
Mm,
I was working so much and sleeping so little that I was literally seeing shadow people. That's
yeah,
a real thing.
yeah.
Terrifying, by the way. I was turning green in the chair. My daughter comes over and she looks at me and she's like, "You're gonna die." And I was
not
like,
eating
"Oh
right, not
Knife
boy."
spending
in
any time
hand,
on
but
Yeah,
couch,
right.
unrelated.
yeah.
So I bought the
Never
bike.
moving.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, I had a steady diet of fast food and cigarettes. And yeah, obviously I don't do that anymore.
Cigarettes and burgers and caffeine will just get
Yeah,
you so
I was
far.
yeah. I'm not getting any younger.
Yep.
So
Are you
yeah.
sure?
Well, I'd like
I
to get younger,
mean,
but
technically, you're David too. At the
Oh, yeah, right?
yeah.
yeah. So
Mm.
that's Thank you again for all the perspective.
Well, thank you.
If you guys have
Yeah.
any other questions, do we
Yeah.
want to?
No, thanks so much for being here, for
Oh,
doing
No.
it.
gladly. Well, if you ever
It's
had any questions and I can answer them, I'm on social
right.
media
It's a
and I'm
super unique perspective that you're not going to get from just anybody on the street.
Hmm.
Right.
So
That
it's really awesome.
yeah.
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 So
But you will actually be at Tremendicon.
I'll be up to Tremendicon,
It
yeah, for
was
the 3 days. Yeah. It's the end of this month.
I
right
think
May
it's
thirty
May
Okay, well,
first
then
through
31st.
you
June
gotta come
2nd.
by our booth and hang out too.
Oh,
May
you gonna be there too?
31st
Yeah.
through
Oh,
We'll be
June
wow.
yeah, we'll be there.
2nd in Springfield, Missouri at the Oasis Convention Center.
Yep,
Yeah.
Yeah,
we'll
that's
be
it.
there
Yeah.
We will
tattooing,
also
Right
be
on.
there,
Can't
Oh,
wait
yeah.
to see
cool. I
you.
can't
I'll
and
wait to
then
see
swing
that.
by
we're
and see
doing a
your
live
sarcophagus.
Artistry Unearthed recording panel.
Nice.
We're going to
Okay.
talk about the
Oh,
tattoo
so,
industry
I
and
like
Q and
that.
A and
there's
everything. So
Mhm.
I'll extend the olive branch for you to just even come in and sit on that
Oh man,
for
I
a
yeah,
minute.
we'll
Yeah.
pay
yeah.
we'll pay your well.
Yeah.
You'll already be there, but like yeah,
Yeah. I'm gonna
We'll
be
pay
on
your way in.
I'll
yeah,
be on
yeah.
some panels and stuff on that too. So I'll have my booth.
That's gonna
I'm
be
not gonna
awesome.
set up like the gigantic thing, but I'm
Oh,
gonna have I will have
I
my
don't blame you.
I'll have my
Right.
it's so heavy, but
Yeah.
I'll have my monsters and my original Universal Studios monsters, the pen and inks, and
Yeah.
I'll actually
I'll
mainly
have
have
to come and grab me
yeah.
some
Yeah, we're gonna have we
So
have some empty wall
Well,
space, as you can tell. So.
so
well,
we can find you at Tremendicon, but where can people find you online?
oh man, I closed my excuse my
Instagram?
website down. But
Well,
if
fine.
people wanted to get a hold of me, through Facebook, Messenger, I'm on Instagram as well. But I'm
DA
not,
Frizell, right?
yeah, DA Frizell.
Okay.
Yep, or
awesome.
David Frizell.
But yeah,
Yeah, one Z, two L's.
we'll have hopefully have this episode posted
Yeah,
by then. You can
yeah,
I will send you a copy of it so that
cool.
ahead of time so you
Yeah,
can review it and
all
make
right.
sure. Yeah, but
Yeah,
but no, I
yeah.
again thank you so
Okay.
much for being here and hanging out with us. I know this has been a long time coming. I know you've been really busy, but I thank you
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
answering and not ghosting me on the
Oh
barrage of
man,
text.
I tried. I was like, oh my god, I really, yeah. You would. I wanted to get in here a lot earlier, and I know I had to put you off and put you off
That's all
because
right.
No, no,
Life
no, no. We
happens.
we
yeah.
ex
We
we
get it.
expect that, yeah.
We get
Mm,
it.
yeah. Well, I
Totally.
appreciate you sticking in there and or hanging in there
No,
and
and I mean, if you're always invited I mean, you're always invited if you have anything
thanks.
big that you
Sure.
can talk about, you wanna talk about,
Cool.
I mean, we're
Yeah.
we're s
Yeah, come on in here. We'll plug it.
yeah.
Oh, right on. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Have
Yeah,
a
much
good
love,
one.
man.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much, dude.
Appreciate it, bud.